All right, so we're going to go right into chapter 14, and then we're going to go into our quiz today. Speciation and extinction, chapter 14, all right? Chapter 14. All right, so some of this will be a review of some things that have already been taught, as you'll see, as we talked about evolution and how species, the strong, the fittest, are able to survive, reproduce, and produce more offspring. Mutations, how mutations happen. Some mutations make no changes. Some mutations are beneficial to a species. Some mutations can be harmful to a species. That's very important. We talked about heredity, if you remember that. We've talked about passing traits, genes, alleles, chromosomes, passing those down from generation to generation. Dominant, recessive, incomplete dominance, all of those things. So all that information are things we need to know. You'll be tested on the quiz. Yes, Miss Lucas.
Can we go over that?
We've talked about it. So mom, dad go through they have cells that go through the process of meiosis. Meiosis is developing the sperm and the egg. And so half of your DNA comes from mom, half of your DNA comes from dad. When it comes together, forms what is called a zygote, which is a fertilized egg, which is going to implant in the mother's womb and then eventually grow into a child, right? So heredity is, how when we talk about heredity, we're talking about how traits are passed on. If dad is dominant for something, mom is recessive for something, then the child is going to express the child will be heterozygous, have a dominant and a recessive allele, but express the dominant feature, for instance, as an example, right? We talked about that with the, eye color and things like that, okay? So heredity is that study of how different traits are passed on through generations, okay? Just like we talk about sickle cell anemia, I was just talking about that. Since my first wife had sickle cell anemia, my children are carriers, but they don't have it because they're heterozygous. But their children, depending on who they decide to mate with, marry and mate with, their children could potentially have sickle cell anemia. Okay, so that's the study of heredity. All right, so mutations, as going into this chapter, are the raw material for evolution. We talked about evolution. All right, so certain mutations, changes in your DNA, and not necessarily like your DNA is going to change just inside of your body, but as DNA changes over time, through generation after generation, we have this raw material, so to speak, this process that is happening called evolution, because some changes are good and it make you more fit, live longer, more able to regenerate. Your offspring live longer, able to make more offspring that live longer, and some may have no effect and some may have a negative effect. All right, so for instance, y'all were talking about earlier the strong lion, for instance, or the fast cheetah. If a animal through a genetic mutation is able to be faster, that would make it more able to survive, therefore make it more able to reproduce. And therefore that gene, or that may have started off as a mutation, will be passed on through heredity, passed on through generations, and you'll get where you have natural selection to where you have the faster animal is naturally selected. They will live longer, so they will start to propagate more than those who are slower, and then it'll slowly weed out to where thousands of years later, all the cheetahs are fast and the slow ones have died away. All right? So, I mean, it's a lot of terms: heredity, evolution, natural selection, genes, chromosomes, chromatin, alleles, some other words I'm forgetting right now. But all of these are things that we want to try to understand and put together. All right, so your DNA nucleotide, what does DNA stand for, Ms. Lucas?
Deoxyribonucleic acid.
Deoxyribonucleic acid. The nucleotide, what are the nucleotides in DNA? You forgot. Mr. Mathis?
It's not
You're right.
A T C G.
Correct.
Oh wait, that's what it. I thought that was the four. I thought it was the four.
Base pairs, nucleotides, yes.
Oh, A T C G.
Yeah, you should have that in your notes. All right, so it's saying how in this example, so DNA nucleotide changes can alter how proteins function. So if I change the nucleotides, somebody get Miss Jackson, can somebody give me a definition of a gene? I'm just
Over here trying to study. You worry about.
you trying to study. Oh, we having class right now. We trying to learn. All right, so a gene. Anybody remember what a gene is?
Part of the chromosome.
Part of it, but what is the specific
A small region on the chromosome.
that does what?
Carries a trait like hair, eye color.
It does, but a gene specifically codes for a specific protein, a section of DNA that codes for a specific protein, which could be eye color, could be, hair color, could be those things, but that's all done by proteins, okay?
So what is it? The gene is.
A specific section of DNA that codes for a specific protein, okay? And so if I change the nucleotides somehow, there's a mutation, so that GA, see this G, it was GGCT, went to GACT. If somehow this mutation happens, and you have two different mutations here, and then long time occurs, evolution, it evolves, and it's saying this is how you could have two totally different species over the course of time because of this mutation. This could potentially create a different species than this species because they have different genetic codes now due to a different DNA. All right, so we have small evolutionary changes can accumulate in a population. That's called microevolution. These can occur in just a few generations. Eventually, this can lead to macroevolution, which is big changes over the course of many, many, many years. So multiple generations, right, can get to large-scale changes. And this is what when they talk about, human beings evolving from gorillas and things like of that nature, when you hear those kinds of things, having a common ancestor, this is what they're talking about. They're saying that many years ago, their DNA was one type of DNA, but somehow there was a mutation and then it split, and they're saying one became, gorillas or whatever, and one eventually became human beings. But they had the same DNA once upon a time, but then there was a mutation and there was a split in the DNA and they formed two different species. That's kind of what they're saying happened, right? So when you see that. So in evolution, new species form while others become extinct, okay? Because remember, when you have a mutation, you have a change in the DNA, it may not necessarily lead to a positive change. It could lead to something that is not good and that doesn't live long. So species are distinct groups of organisms, but the definition of species has changed over time. All right, we always got to go back to Darwin when we're talking about evolution and all these kinds of things. So Linnaeus and Darwin defined species based on appearance. As we know from, anybody remember genotype versus phenotype? You looked at me. So what's the difference between genotype and phenotype? You looked right in my eyes. We made eye contact with both eyes. You don't remember? Genotype and phenotype. Anybody? Mr. Mathis, go ahead. My star pupil.
Boy, sir. Phenotype is phenotype looks. Genotype is.
This might be on the quiz.
Okay, genotype is looks. Phenotype is. Help me out.
So
That's it.
you were on the right track at first. Phenotype is the physical characteristics. The genotype is the actual DNA. So remember, something that is heterozygous and something that is dominant would have the same phenotype, but they would have different genotypes, right? So genotype is actually what my DNA says, and then the phenotype is the physical characteristics that are displayed, all right? And so oftentimes they looked at phenotype until we were able to recognize DNA and really study the genotype and realize that some things that looked alike were not necessarily as alike as we thought they were. All right?
So genotype is the DNA.
The DNA. It's what your DNA says you are. And then phenotype is what we see, what we physically see. All right? So, for instance, you could be heterozygous dominant. You could be homozygous dominant for like red eyes, let's say capital R, right? But your genotype could be different. So your genotype could be capital R, or it could be capital R, lowercase r. But you would have, the phenotype would be the same. You'd have red eyes, but the genotype would be different because that's your actual DNA. Okay? That makes sense? Good. I sound like ChatGPT?
No,
Dang it.
They
They would have explained it better than me? Oh, I didn't just make it understandable? Oh my gosh, y'all don't give me any break. All right. I'm gonna be your favorite professor by the end of this class. Wait a second. Give me a chance. All right. Wait a minute, you're missing two people beside you. And we're missing right here too.
They gonna be able to make it up.
Yeah, no, they're making it up. All right, so each species name combines the broader classification genus with the term species. And so we're gonna see that. Leopard and bobcat look very similar, but different species. More recently, the biological species concept defines species based on their potential to interbreed and produce fertile offspring, right? Humans generally breed with humans, but different species generally breed with similar like species and produce viable offspring. Obviously, if humans tried to breed with something that was not human, it wouldn't produce viable offspring. So new species form when some individuals can no longer interbreed with the rest of their group. So sometimes you have a new species when it can no longer mate with somebody in their group and form a new species. Asexually reproducing species. Asexual, everybody knows what that means?
Say it again.
Asexual. Asexual reproducing species. They produce without a mate.
Yeah.
Reproduce without a mate, I mean. No, I think I said produce. Reproduce without a mate. Species and species represented by fossils never interbreed. Some organisms are able to interbreed, but in nature they do not. They do it very rarely or even never. Huh?
Oh,
You have a question?
Because you said asexual. You said like they don't breed, and I said like Mary, and he looked, and then she said, well, yeah, like Virgin Mary.
Oh, okay. Y'all, y'all threw me for a loop. Okay, all right, wonderful. No, I appreciate that. DNA analysis helps to define a species. All right. Once again, Ms. Jackson, looking at the genotype versus just looking at the phenotype. All right. So, whereas if we look at the phenotype, like if we look at me and you, people might think, oh, y'all. Then people say, like we all look alike. You've ever heard that before? And so, but our genotype may be very different. All right. Same. No. I'm not saying that we do. I'm just saying some people think that. Some people think that and that's the same thing that happened with species. People saw certain animals and thought, oh, this is the leopard, the this, the that. They all look the same. They all must be the same animal, but not necessarily. All right. And so when you look at the DNA, that's why it's important to look at the DNA. When we look at the DNA, we can actually see the differences, right? All right, so researchers compare the nucleotide sequence of genes that organisms have in common. And bacteria and archaea, if the DNA of two organisms is more than 97% identical, they are considered the same species, right? If they're 97% identical, we're considered the same species, right? So you can see some of the human, chimpanzee, mouse, zebrafish, all right?
Do you know how identical were like Neanderthals and Homo sapiens?
I'd have to look it up to get to the actual percentage. I'd have to look it up. I don't know off the top of my head now. If the potential to interbreed defines a species, reproductive isolation results in a new species, right? Remember, when we talk about fitness in biology, if you remember we talked about that. What is, tell me your name again?
Ethan.
Ethan.
Yeah.
What is fitness in biology?
Fitness and biology?
Yeah. You remember what I said it was?
Tell me what you said.
Okay. Can somebody answer that question for me? What is fitness? Mr. Matthews, you're answering all the questions. I need somebody else to answer. And Emirado? Do you remember what fitness is in biology? Y'all surprised I know your names. Look at, you're like, how you know me? I love
You called me by my last name.
it. Huh?
You called me by my last
Yeah, that was your last name. I know, yeah. Do you remember what fitness is in biology? It's my, right? May? Is it May or my? My. What is fitness in biology?
Ability to reproduce.
Correct. All right? And so reproductive isolation can either be, if the potential to interbreed defines a species, reproductive isolation results in a new species. So for a species to be fit, they have to be able to reproduce. If it doesn't reproduce with the same type that it used to be associated with, like if it doesn't reproduce with the other gorillas, maybe it's not a gorilla, maybe it's something else, chimpanzee or something like that. All right? So reproductive isolation can either be pre-zygotic. Everybody remember what the zygote is? What is the zygote? Fertilized egg. So pre-zygotic, so prevent formation of an embryo, or post-zygotic. Hybrid individuals have reduced fitness, right? So two separate species trying to mate have a reduced fitness. Their ability to create viable offspring is reduced. Therefore, we may have created a new species. All right, and so this is showing you pre-zygotic reproductive barriers prevent fertilization in certain categories. And then post-zygotic reproductive barriers prevent development of fertile offspring. So certain things can't mate together to be able to reproduce or have difficulty reproducing. Right? So therefore we know they must be two separate species. You can go to the questions on your own and the mastering concepts. All right, let's keep going. Spatial patterns define three types of speciation. So reproductive barriers can arise in three ways depending on spatial patterns. Right? You can have no contact between certain populations. Good morning, how are you? I'm doing great. Just trying to, teach people about, reproduction, evolution, mutations, all those things. If you have any questions, let me know. All right. So like two populations start developing with gaps between them. Populations share a border area. Continuous contact between populations, two different populations. So different things can produce different reproductive barriers. So the first one, allopatric speciation, a barrier physically separates a population into two groups. All right, so we kind of talked about this a little bit when we were talking about interbreeding. We talked about that in the classroom, reason why people don't, one of the downsides if people were to mate with family members, I'm talking about human beings, were to mate with family members, remember we talked about that, right? And so if you isolated yourself to just only people I'm going to marry or date or, let's say mate with, were the people in my like family, then certain genes would get expressed more so than others. And if there was a mutation, it would be more likely that that mutation would be spread faster through generations than if you were to mix with a bigger size of people.
Oh yeah, I brought up the royal family.
I think you did. Right? Do they intermingle? I mean, they mate
They did.
years ago. Or did you watch?
And stuff like
Did you watch Bridgerton?
not the new season.
Oh, okay. I'm just curious. No, my wife got all into that. She was all into Bridgerton.
I do watch, but not yet.
Oh, you haven't watched it?
Last
Okay.
season was my favorite.
Because it's what, 3 seasons? How many has it been?
Four.
This is four now. Okay. My wife's all into it, so she tried to get me to watch it, but she did get me to watch that JFK, the love story. I did watch a little bit of that. That was actually it's pretty good. I don't know if y'all are young, so you probably don't know much about JFK, but it's an interesting story. I mean, it's his father was a president, and blah 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 blah, got killed. It's funny that they have movies about his father and then movies about the son as well. They lived they were very popular, and there's an airport named after them. And there's about to be another airport named after a president really soon. Yeah, I wish. You got, it's in the news. You didn't hear about it in the news? Trump's trying to get an airport named after him in West Palm or something like that. Yeah, but that's a whole nother story. We won't get into politics. All right, so no gene transfers between the two populations. They each proceed down their own evolutionary line. That can happen. And with an allopatric speciation, you can create some reproductive barriers. So if we're only mating with each other, then if there's a mutation, then that mutation will grow and potentially, since we're separated from other parts of our species, if there's a mutation over here, and we only mate with each other, then we could potentially form a new species over time. So that's the idea there. And so that's been documented by different animals that have lived in different parts of, like, been isolated in different places in the world. Has anybody ever been to the Galapagos Islands? No? Anybody ever been there? Okay. I haven't either, but I've heard that it's really cool to go visit. So you have some species there that have been isolated and therefore have formed that are only. I mean, maybe people have come and tried to take them away, but I think there's a couple species there that are only located there. That's the only place that they are in the world. So when I was it's interesting, when I was in Mozambique, which is, just north of South Africa, Mozambique is north of South Africa. There's a tree there called the baobab tree. You can look it up on your computer, but it's only found in like Mozambique, South Africa, and like Australia, which is interesting. And so it's it's amazing how something like that could happen. And that's the only places it's found in the whole world. And then across the border from Mozambique in Malawi, in Lake Malawi, there's a fish that is only found in Lake Malawi. It's not found in any other, I think I forgot the name of it, chapata, some kind of, I have to look it up. There's a fish that's only found there that's not found anywhere else in the world. And so like, it's been isolated, obviously it's, that wasn't the first fish ever. So the idea is that maybe bodies of water were connected at some point, the body of water got isolated, and somehow that fish, due to some kind of genetic mutation, formed a new species, and now that fish is only found in Lake Malawi. All right, so these things can absolutely happen. How are you, Miss Pagan?
I'm great.
You great? Okay. We haven't taken the quiz yet.
I see.
Okay. I wanted to wait for everybody to get
Why
here.
would you stumble our brains like that?
What do you mean?
So you
If I offered the quiz before you got here, then you would have got a 0.
oh, for real?
Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't just be like something happened and then I.
No, you tried that last time. So the next one is parapatric speciation. So part of a population enters a new habitat. Mating can occur between populations, but most individuals mate with their own population, right? You could have a genetic difference, a mutation that develops and somehow create another species that way. And then you have sympatric speciation, populations diverge genetically while living together, all right? This could happen, you know? You could have, even though we're living together, we have, you know, somehow a mutation happens and we start developing two new populations. So although the habitat may appear uniform, it can consist of many microenvironments that select for different phenotypes, right? And that's happened in certain lakes in Africa that I just talked about before. In this case, the chilchilled fish diversified in this small African lake. So all these fish were living in this same lake, but they over time developed these two different populations of fish. So their DNA, their genotype, had some kind of mutation evolved into two different species, even though they were in the same population. Okay? All right, so there's two species there. And so speciation can occur at different paces. So evidence from the fossil records, and people have studied these for many, many years, you know, fossils and how, you know, the different rings in the trees and all those things in the rocks and all that kind of stuff like that. But fossil records support two models of speciation: gradualism and punctuated equilibrium. Gradualism, slowly changing; punctuated equilibrium, an abrupt change. All right, so gradualism suggests that evolution proceeds in small incremental changes. Fossil records show that microscopic ocean protists have evolved gradually. So slowly changing over time, slowly evolving over time. We're talking about long periods of time, many generations. But then also there can be punctuated. Evidence from fossil records show that some animals have evolved in short bursts. All right, so all of a sudden making it an abrupt change genetically. And that could be changes in the environment caused that. It could be just a mutation caused it. All kinds of different things could have led to that. Bursts of speciation occur during adaptive radiation. So a population inhabiting a patchy or heterogeneous environment gives rise to multiple specialized forms in a relatively short time, right? So different things are going on in the same environment. It could lead to that. First flowering plants, for example, diversified quickly as flowers provided new options for reproduction. Punctuated equilibrium fits well with allopatric speciation. All right, so I'm sure some of y'all may have been to the Caribbean. Somebody been to the Caribbean, Jamaica? Where'd you go, Miss Jackson? Okay, very nice. Did you like it? Okay, wonderful, wonderful. I see. You know, it's really cool. Obviously, it's fun to go travel, period, but it's also good because a lot of things grow there in these environments. You know, there's water, plenty of rain, all that kind of stuff. The temperatures are nice and warm, and so a lot of things can grow in these Caribbean environments. And so you can go down there and see quite a few animals if you like different types of animals. But you can also see, you know, some of the effects of evolution. All right, so each Caribbean island has a unique collection of lizard species demonstrating adaptive radiation. So different islands, the different lizards on the islands, they have different lizards on each island based on their environments. Speciation can occur after a mass extinction. So major environmental changes can cause mass extinctions. That's what they believed happened on the Earth. Right? So surviving organisms are able to exploit new resources in a changed environment. So they believe, like, you know, there were temperature changes and all kinds of things were happening, and therefore certain animals couldn't survive, certain animals could survive. And so there was this mass extinction because some of them couldn't survive. A species is extinct, and I'm sure you've heard of the term extinct, right, Ms. Pagan? You've heard of the term extinct? Okay.
Where is life? No more.
No more, right. A species is extinct, and this is what we think happened to the dinosaurs, right? Anybody watch Jurassic Park? Okay, good. Do you like it?
Yeah, I almost became a paleontologist.
Oh, nice. Nice. But, the movie's obviously fictional, but it has some true elements to it. The fact that, we've been able to find dinosaur bones and all those kinds of things. Now, they have not been able to take a dinosaur bone and bring, like, velociraptors back to life in real life, but it's kind of cool to see in a movie. But those animals that we have their bones are now extinct, unfortunately. All right, they're extinct, and that means they no longer exist. All their members have died off. They were not able to evolve to be able to survive the change. What we believe happened is they were not able to evolve to be able to survive the change in the environment over the years. Most extinctions occur as part of the background extinction rate, the pace at which a species go extinct due to gradually changing environments, okay? Fossil record shows evidence of 5 mass extinctions in the last 600 million years due to major environmental changes, okay? So they believe there's been mass extinction. So the environment changed, therefore, some species could not survive. They were not fit enough to survive. They were not able to reproduce enough, and their offspring were not able to be viable enough to survive the changes in the environment. Therefore, they became extinct. The 6th mass extinction is happening right now. Current extinction rates are accelerating due to human activity, especially in vulnerable areas. Right? So they believe that environment is still changing. It's not something that just happened millions of years ago, but it's happening right now. My daughter, my 6-year-old daughter, who I just talked about earlier, was just telling me yesterday that she learned about pollution. All right. She was like, "Daddy, I learned about pollution." I was like, "Oh yeah, I said, "What's pollution?" And she was like, "When people throw trash everywhere." I was like, "Okay, I guess that's pretty much right." And so, people have heard about the ozone layer and pollution and all these things. This has made some changes to our environment. And so we have, anybody ever saw the movie? I know somebody saw it. The Endgame, the Marvel movie. The Avengers. Yeah, the Avengers. What he says in the movie actually makes a lot of sense. I know it's terrible, but it makes a lot of sense. The guy, what's his name? The bad guy? Thanos. He's like, basically we have not enough resources and too many beings. He said, I'm going to snap my finger and kill half of the universe's population. He said, so then everybody will have more than enough. That was what he wanted to do. He wanted to get all the 5, the stones and the thing, the glove, and he was.
Did they come out with another?
And they ended up stopping him or whatever, or undoing it or whatever. Yeah. They undid it, right.
The universes where he got the other half.
Right.
So they just kind of mixed it.
Which is crazy, but
the reason he did it is because his entire planet starved because they ran out of resources.
They did. That's what I'm saying. So, but if you see what is happening, so there was a real element to that movie, and that's what I think made it very interesting for a lot of people, because yes, if you just look at Earth, I mean, he was looking at the whole universe, but if you just look at Earth, the more people there are, the more consumers there are of the natural resources. We have to eat, breathe, all the things, drink water. And we get the pleasure of having probably more than enough here in America, but a lot of places in the world, people are starving. A lot of places in the world, people don't have clean water. Resources are very limited in a lot of places in the world. And I heard this the other day, not the other day, I heard this last year. They said, even if all of America and all of Europe switched over to EV, they're saying switch over to EV is better for the environment. They said, if all of Europe and all of America switched over to EV, there's still enough pollution created by the rest of the world to where it would not slow down the dissolving of the ozone or any of that kind of stuff that's happening they said it would only be like a minimal effect long term if all of us who could afford EV switched over to EV, because there is so much pollution being created in the world. Not to make everybody sad, but there's a huge effect of pollution, of, we're building high rises, we're cutting down trees, we're changing the environment. It's just the reality of what's happening. And so animals who are not able to evolve or adapt to the changes in the environment are potentially getting extinct. Catastrophic events can also explain mass extinctions. Obviously, if there was a huge meteor that hit the Earth, it could cause a mass extinction that way as well. And debris from that could cause a mass extinction. Obviously, if the Earth decided to split in half and half of it was destroyed, or if Thanos destroyed this planet, we would have an extinction of a whole bunch of a species right away. We also have, I'm sure everybody's probably heard of plate tectonics. They believe that different continents, which are now split apart, used to be joined together. So therefore, remember, just like we're talking about, if you have like one species, the allopatric model, if you have one species and it's all one body, or one, you have a one land mass, those species are mingling, mating with each other. But if I were to over time split into multiple land masses, now the tiger on this continent and the tiger on that continent no longer mates together, and they're in different environments, and so it's a potential for them to evolve into a different species. All right. And then we have this biological classification system based on common descent. So biologists, you all are biologists because you're studying biology. What is biology the study of? Life. Wonderful. Biologists try to organize all species into classification systems that reflects evolutionary history. So not only do we want to know, like, what is that species now, but how are species connected to other species, and what is their potential common ancestor, and how did it and people study how it maybe evolved and separated over time. So these are things that biologists like to study and look up, and paleontologists like to look at as well, and all of that information works together. All right, so taxonomy is a science of describing, naming, and classifying different species. All right, the tiger, the lion, the starfish, all the different species. All right, so taxonomic hierarchy organizes species into progressively larger groups. Right, so start off with the species. Then we go to the genus, the family, the order, the class, the phylum, the kingdom, and eventually the domain. The eukarya is the domain that we are in. Eukarya. What is eukarya? What does that mean? You have your what distinguishes eukarya from prokarya? Huh? And what about the nucleus?
You go through the PNAT stage and wait, what are you talking about? What you said?
She said it's the nucleus, but what about the nucleus that distinguishes the eukaryote from the prokaryote?
Well, prokaryote is for plants and bacteria.
But what distinguishes the difference between the two?
The nucleus stores your DNA.
The nucleus stores your DNA. Correct. All right, so modern taxonomy is based on the work of Linnaeus, which we already mentioned earlier with, I forget the other guy's name now.
Charles Darwin.
Darwin, yes. The more features the two organisms have in common, the more taxonomic levels they share. All right, so same domain and kingdom, squid and the fly, but in the case of the chimpanzee and the orangutan, they have same domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, but they are different species. Phylogenetics is the study of evolutionary relationships, okay? See, how did a species potentially evolve over time, right? And so what was their common ancestor that eventually they evolved and split somehow into different species over time? That's the idea behind phylogenetics, trying to find the sort of the common ancestor. So evolutionary tree, how did things evolve? And so they produced these phylogeny, constructed phylogeny, this pathway to try to understand that. Cladistics is based on shared derived traits. So cladistics distinguishes between traits that are ancestral, inherited, and traits that are derived, not inherited from an ancestor. Then we have a cladogram. See that here is a type of phylogenetic tree. And this is a diagram used to develop hypotheses about relationships between groups of organisms, right? So somehow they had a common ancestor, but eventually we had amphibians, eventually mammals, turtles, lizards, snakes, and they've tried to figure out what they had in common and how that separated into different species over time. And you can develop this sort of diagram to sort of show that over time. So a clade is a group of organisms consisting of a common ancestor and all of its descendants, right? So these three have a common ancestor between them. It is believed they have a common ancestor in this case. According to this cladogram, the birds, dinosaurs, and crocodiles make up one clade. Within it, birds and dinosaurs make up a smaller clade. All right, so trying to figure out what are the commonalities. How did these different species evolve over time? If you trace the turtle and the lizard, for instance, the turtle and the lizard lineages from right to left until they intersect to find their common ancestor. So if you go this way, you'd find common ancestor of reptiles, the lizards, snakes, and turtles had once upon a time they had a common ancestor. Most of the time they had the same DNA. A more recent common ancestor means that the turtles and lizards are more closely related than turtles and mammals. Okay? Just showing you some commonalities. To read a cladogram, look for the last common ancestors. These cladograms all show the same evolutionary relationships, right? Just showing you different ways, once again, that they have evolved. So this would be, you had some type of mutation, evolutionary split here, you evolved into these two species. You had some kind of mutation here, some evolutionary split here, and eventually evolved into this monotrims, and these eventually evolved into two more species. So it's just showing you the history. To build one of these cladograms, tally up the shared derived features, which they're looking at the phenotypes, but we also can study the genotypes. And they try to hypothesize how closely related different species are. All right. The cladogram compares variations in DNA sequence. All right. So if you look at the phenotype, obviously that can give us an idea that certain species can be related. And that's one of the things when we look at gorillas and human beings, people look at them and say, oh, you can look at them and say there may be some relation, but then they also study the genetics, the genotype, to actually see the differences in the genes and the DNA to be able to say, oh, this is there's some similarities here, and there's the potential that they could have evolved from the same species. Right, and so it's just showing you a little bit more of that. You also have these two different groups, this monophyletic group, crocodiles, lizards, snakes, and turtles are reptiles, but these groups do not form a clade. Paraphyletic group includes a common ancestor, but it excludes some of the descendants. I won't ask you about these. But that's the end of that. All right?